Yeah. So we're doing something here that I imagine a secular audience member who doesn't have, a Christian worldview, if they were watching, would say, well, surely, you're talking about God and masculinity. Doesn't Christianity produce domineering, nasty men who are bad husbands and bad fathers? That's something you get kind of straight into in the book. Right after that, you sort of you tackle that topic. Really from you're not just giving the arguments of here's what the Bible says on it. You're actually giving the studies. So what did you discover as you were writing the book in that regard?
Yeah, so you're right. First of all, it is true that the main message from the secular world is that theologically conservative Christian men, if they believe in any sort of notion of male headship in the home, that is going to turn them into overbearing, tyrannical, oppressive, abusive patriarchs. I'll give you just one quote. This is from the co-founder of the Church Too movement, which came after the Me Too movement. And she said that the theology of male headship feeds the rape culture that we see permeating American Christianity today. And what happened is the social scientists were reading these kinds of accusations and saying, where's your evidence? You're making these charges, but where's your data? And so they went out and did the studies. I have, in my book, I cite some dozen or so studies by psychologists, sociologists, who went out and did studies of Christian men and found out it was completely the opposite, completely debunks the secular narrative that evangelical Christian men who are committed to their faith, who actually attend church regularly and so on, test out the highest in terms of being loving and engaged husbands and fathers. Wow. Their wives report the highest level of happiness. By the way, some pushback I get is, sure, their wives said that. Their husband's sitting right there. But no, they did interview the wives separately. Yeah. And evangelical fathers spend more time with their children, 3.5 hours more per week than secular fathers. Evangelical couples divorce at a lower rate than secular couples, 20% lower. And then the real surprise, evangelical couples have the lowest rate of domestic abuse and violence of any major group in America. Wow. So this is something that, on the one hand, I think churches need to know better. Yeah. Because I have a graduate student who is in charge of the women's ministry at a very large Baptist church here in Houston. And she said, on Mother's Day, we hand out flowers and tell the mothers they're wonderful. On Father's Day, we scold the men and tell them to do better. Right. So that, okay, stop the scolding. No more scolding. Bring this data into the church where we can encourage men. The objective data is showing that they're doing very well. And it's also very good for apologetics purposes, like you said, for bringing it out into the public realm as well to show that it debunks the secular narrative. And it's not just a pep talk from some religious leader. It is solid empirical research. This is evidence-based findings that Christianity does have the power to reconcile the sexes, as I put it in the subtitle of my book. Yeah.
Very good. So I think that's very interesting. I don't know if you've come across Pearl Davis in your travels on the internet at any point? Yeah. So for those that don't know, she is a sort of anti-feminist female figure, but is very anti-feminist, says some pretty egregious stuff. But she's been on a real sort of tear recently, talking about marriage and that men shouldn't get married, essentially, and attacking within that then Christianity and saying, well, that doesn't make any difference. But the data actually shows, as you say, that church-going couples are much less likely to divorce, much more likely to have happy marriages, and so Christianity actually does provide a tangible solution to what are admittedly some big problems that we have in the world today in that area of marriage. Is that right? That Christianity is actually probably one of the best ways to guarantee a long-term happy marriage is to marry someone who is evangelical and church-going?
Yeah, let me give you a quote. Sometimes a quote can really crystallize it. So take out my notes here and read a quote.
There you go.
One of my major sources is Brad Wilcox. He's a sociologist at the University of Virginia, and he is considered one of the top marriage researchers in the nation. To give you a sense of his stature, he gets articles published in the New York Times. So, which, not too many Christians get published there.
Right.
He's Catholic, by the way.
Right.
But so this is a quote from the New York Times. He wrote, "It turns out that the happiest of all wives in America are religious conservatives." They're focusing especially on the wives because the assumption is that these marriages are oppressive to the women. Mm-hmm. So no, right. It turns out that the happiest of all wives in America are religious conservatives. Fully 73% of wives who hold conservative gender values and attend religious services regularly with their husbands have high-quality marriages. And then he turns to his secular colleagues. I don't know if you know this, but sociology tends to be one of the most highly secularized disciplines. Yeah. Some are more secular than others. So he turns to his colleagues and says, academics need to cast aside their prejudices about religious conservatives and evangelicals in particular. Conservative Protestant married men with children are consistently the most active and expressive fathers and the most emotionally engaged husbands. So this is the data. And you're right. It's something that we should be able to bring in both to our churches and to the public square, and people like Pearl who are out there saying, oh, marriage is bad for men. And by the way, Brad Wilcox, the guy I just quoted, has also interacted with Pearl on Twitter. What he did is he pulled out studies showing that married men with children are the happiest. He pulled out a graph where, single men are down here, and in terms of levels of happiness. Sure. Single men with children, I think, was next. Then married men was next, and married men with children was clearly the highest. So not just women like marriage, but married men with children test out as the highest in terms of happiness.